to talk a little bit about the, coming sort of early years, 60s, 70s, working with it was the artist Joe Brainerd, maybe some of you have heard of, connected to the so-called New York School, was close to Ron Padgett, Ted Berrigan. They'd all spent time together in Oklahoma. And so growing up in New York, I was also aware of the work of Frank O'Hara, John Ashbery. These were some second generation. We'll play that next. And so we started collaborating. Joe was doing comic books with poets, and then George Schneemann, another artist. Sadly, both of these artists have passed away, but they were probably more than anyone else so connected to that scene and did more collaboration with poets than anyone I know. And there will be, Rizzoli is actually doing a book about the New York School and collaboration. So it's a very interesting history and not that documented in that it's come together in one collection. But there was this show recently in New York at the Thibaut Dunage Gallery, and I had a piece in there with the artist Red Brooms, and that had been an idea that then became text. And my idea was a tripartite Madonnas, a triptych of Madonnas, 3 Madonnas, and one would be Kerouac and his mother, the other would be Marianne Moore and her mother, and then Carlos Williams and his mother, and then there would be little legends. So Ed designed this wooden, carved wooden thing, and then the legends with his handwriting were written in gold. They were basically little stories of the relationship. So there's the wild account of Kerouac and his mother up all night, drinking, and he's got the knife, and she's doing the laundry and putting, out on hanging the laundry on the line at 3 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, that's their legend. I think Marianne Moore it's something to do with a circus, and the Williams, I can't remember how that goes, but so the idea came, and it was also being aware of Red Brooms' work, and he's done these wonderful. Amazing portraits of Picasso or various musicians and huge installations with various characters and recognizable historic characters. So I thought, let's do the Madonnas, and then the humor of these relationships was interesting. So that was another, but I wanted to say that the spirit of the sort of New York School spirit, and then you had the work of, as I referenced in the beginning, the Third Mind, William Burroughs' work with cut up and montage and seeing what happens. And that was also coming into and was very influential with the poet Ted Berrigan and his sonnets and so on. So it was a lot of, sort of cross-fertilization. But working with Joe and George was amazing, and it was also very social. You would go to one another's homes. These are not people who had, huge lofts and so on, and you would just come in and had a couple of hours, and George would put out a big piece of Arches paper. He'd have maybe some collaged images. I'd open a notebook or something would occur to me. And there's a bit of I've written about some of that work with George. And then later, when a well-known artist, I've worked with Richard Tuttle and Kiki Smith a little bit, and currently now with Pat Steer, who's a fantastic painter. And, there are other people involved. In the case of Pat Steer, we're working with this wonderful Brodsky Center at Rutgers. We have master printers, and it's a long, slow process. And at the end, there's only, 17 copies that sell for a lot of money and are in museums and that sort of thing. Likewise with Richard, I worked with him. It was a collaboration also with others, a Chinese actor, a Chinese makeup artist. Richard was doing this wild makeup. I was directing a video with this Chinese opera actor, performer, Su Chen, and we were in upstate New York on somebody's sort of rural semi-farm, and then it had all started with this poem of mine, an older poem called Makeup on Empty Space, and Richard was the one who invited me in because of that poem. So then I did a recording of that poem, and it's a box that you open up. It's like a magic lantern box, and you have this little thing that can turn around a light. You have the video, you have a tape recording, and you have the images of Richard's strange makeup. At one point he has a boat for a mustache, And the movie itself was filmed in this rural environment. So Suchen is in a tree, he's in the water, and it's wild. It's called Four Voices in One Part. I mean, some title that sort of says it all. But, and so that can be installed. It can fill a room if you wanted to. So everything has its different, but I do find that a lot of these things are performative. And Noah, the artist I work with, I just read from, is trying to put together for his trick house, or something with a collage of voice and the images, and then actual shots of the installation. So it's interesting how things morph and continue to have a life in different forms. So I'll show another project with Ed Bose. This also a section out of Iovis. He was working with a performer. She's actually a poet and singer, Elena Ferris, and they were working on another project, and I pulled her in to read this. Go on the
collaboration with the
collaborate. But she, so I had her read, she's very stunning and almost like a model, and I wanted to do almost as if she's giving us this report on the urgency of water, because I do think that, it's going to be the water wars next, and the food wars and so on, but water is really an issue. It's certainly an issue if you live in Colorado, and many people do not own the water they have to buy their water and so on. So there's some message about, the coming wars, and yet it's spoken by this intense, very stunning young woman. I didn't want her to be like a CNN talking head, but there's a little bit of that. And Ed Bose likes to work with sometimes almost, soap opera, for want of a better word, a little bit of melodrama. So she's also, Elena Ferris is also reading, she was reading some, I think this was coming into the other project, some Virginia Woolf. So there's text of Virginia Woolf and then my text. And we'll show that. And this is called Screen Text. And so it's almost like a screen test as well, but it's screen text. This is the joke.
"What do you do?" she demanded, looking at Rachel with a slightly ironical smile. Rachel had scarcely listened to any of this, and her expression was vacant and unhappy. She had conceived an equal dislike for Lila Harrison and her work in the Deptford Road, and for Evelyn N. and her profusion of love affairs. "I play the piano," she said with an affectation of composure. When there was no wind, we stopped the clocks, and when that shifted, started them up again, but in one frame of mind, not nebulous by no means. My time was yours. Yours was as if I was in my room thinking, horse first, horses first, straightening up the room, thinking this about running store to animals. What I cared about was monitoring, earning my necessary water. You might have to earn it. You might. You realize that might be coming soon. Drinking it and earning it go hand in hand. I'm warning you. Don't say I didn't. Do you deserve water? Do you merit? And what do you merit? So while they're saying exotic derivatives, and I don't gather that in so much as exotic is for me the animal, and there's this notion of feeding off of something unhealthy, dangerous. Meanwhile, she, the animal, is just the opposite, elusive, darts away, fast fish, or horse first then, but I digress. I know I am a derivative, and of them I know, derivative of them, animal. They had him, one of our extraordinary humans. At the end, when asked about the future, it is recorded say, one world at a time. He was one to walk a lot. In Echoson, you know this, gentle listener, when the Prosimians divided from the anthropoids, well, that was a telling time. And if they can find us a 47 million-year-old ancestor, then we are in serious revision. Once, I wanted an age that was a climate of ideas. I walked, I rode, I stood around, I migrated, I grew fins, I swam. I wasn't so lonely.
Just to make this kind of work of late. I see it's very, much in the little lab. It's not like it's, shown on television or anything. But again, very close to, close to those, shots in the living room and around the kind of Colorado environment. So, any other? Yeah. Sure.
I guess I was just wondering, after making kind of videos of your poems thinking more in terms of that? Is that something that...
Not really, no.
Okay.
Again, I see it as a manifestation, like an avatar of something. And it's just, you know, a very short text out of a 1,032-page project. So it's just a little, you know, side, part of the rhizome, you know, the tuber system, the horizontal tuber system that occasionally needs to morph. And yeah.
After collaborating with so many different people in so many different ways, have you ever worked on a project that you felt like traveled uncomfortably far from your control?
Well, working with my son, I just have to trust him because he puts up such an argument, you know, and never wants me to be very histrionic or demonstrative. It's always tone it down, you know, read in a steadier way. I can always do something that was just do it straighter. And anytime I rant and rave, I read this piece last night, neurolinguistically, this is the, and at some point, there's a place where you can just add the names. You know, I said strangle the 1%, but it means strangle Rumsfeld, you know, or strangle the tree. And Ambrose says, we can't, those guys are toast, Mom, they're gonna be toast. We don't include them, we don't dignify them by putting them on our CDs, so. And it's interesting, you know, of course, this long relationship, and we have a whole Manatee suite based on the Manatee humanity, which became, I mean, so emotional for me. There's these lines about the mother manatee and the just one manatee offspring, and on the recording, he was able to get the manatee song, the song of the manatees in there, and then his own voice sort of singing like, there's this thing about the sirens, invoking the sirens. Manatee are our sirens, or something. Manatee are our sirens. They live in the house of the sirens. Our Sirenians and live in the house of the sirens. And then he put his voice through one of these things where it sounds like a chorus of female voices. So my son, the manatee, the thing about the mother, it was so intense, and I never would have dreamed, you know, we would come this far. And then I have a section in the long project which is called G-Spot. And Ambrose has this piano thing that goes with G-Spot. So, I mean, it's more, I can handle it, but I never, it's gone, you know. And you were saying something about it's scary working with. What?
I said it in a good way.
Yeah, it's scary working with your child. And then, I think some of these other kinds of collaborations, infrastructure collaborations, which are very important, you know, co-founding the Kerouac School with Allen, working also on, you know, anthologies, which include a lot of other people, and editing is a kind of collaboration, being a small press print, you know, editor and so on, working collaboratively with others, founding small presses with others, cranking it out on the Vimeo machine, you know, years ago, working with other people who think the page is too inked or it's too messy and those kinds of things. You never know where they go.